Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, Supply Chain Insights, the podcast for your supply chain leader who is on the go and wants to be in the know. And now, your host, Lora Cecere.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. This is the show for the supply chain leader who's on the go but wants to be in the know. My name is Lora Cecere. I'm the founder of Supply Chain Insights, and I'm interviewing the technologists that are coming to the Supply Chain Insights Global Summit on September 3rd through the 5th. Today, I'm interviewing John Tecce, who leads the commercial teams for the Northeast for ThoughtSpot, which I've just written a blog about as a cool vendor in the supply chain management space. So, John, let's start. Tell the audience a little bit about you, a little bit about ThoughtSpot, and what you think Supply Chain 2030 looks like. Let's start. What about you?
So about me, first of all, thank you, Laura. I really appreciate you hosting me now. I'm looking forward to the summit. Second, I've spent my whole career in technology in various forms, most recently here, of course, with ThoughtSpot. We are leading the augmented analytics wave, or whatever you want to call it, with a combination of search, with a search engine built by a group of ex-Googlers, and artificial intelligence to leverage that search to surface insights, anomalies, and correlations to answer the questions that you didn't think to ask. So have a passion for working with large enterprises to help them solve problems from anywhere from inventory analysis to working capital optimization to cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Really anything across the full supply chain is sort of where we live. And to your point about Supply Chain 2030, the biggest challenge that our customers are addressing with ThoughtSpot is really around getting the right data to make decisions at the right point in time. So if you think about 20, 30, 10 years from now, it will be a place where business users, a director of transportation or a procurement manager, won't even have to ask that question, right? The machine or the platform, like a ThoughtSpot, will be smart enough to anticipate those needs and deliver that data in the right format to answer any potential questions that person may have based on indicators occurring within that data. So we may even move beyond the concept of search entirely to being able to anticipate and react to that person's needs based on what's going on in that data, and really allowing the human to focus much more on strategy and more soft skills, so to speak, to drive the supply chain forward.
So, John, let's talk about clients that have deployed this kind of search analytics and the ability to answer questions they don't know to ask. Can you give some examples of where you've seen some successful deployments in supply chain? Because I don't find a lot of people know about ThoughtSpot, or, this kind of analytics is new to them.
Absolutely. So let's look at two examples in supply chain, one on the front end with procurement. If you look at the ability to analyze things down to a particular supplier, if you're in a procurement role and trying to understand what are we ordering from the supplier, how often, at what rate, what are the anomalies associated with that contract, how does that supplier compare to other suppliers that we have, how, from a geographic standpoint, geopolitical standpoint, how is that supplier's location impacting our margins and ultimately our cash cycle. So we have a very large automotive manufacturer that leverages ThoughtSpot across thousands of procurement users, and we don't license by end users. So this is truly able to be extended across the entire procurement team. And they have found a 9-figure savings allocation based on the ability to leverage ThoughtSpot in areas like identifying anomalies, for example, supplier X that has a much higher unit cost against other similar suppliers. Or if you look at again, what's going on with China right now and maybe with Mexico, being able to identify what is our risk and our exposure to suppliers in areas that may be facing tariffs that will cause a cost increase potentially, and how can we be more flexible about shifting over. And we're able to do that by enabling a simple business user, a procurement manager, for example, that's able to just type in using natural language, show me our suppliers in China last week by unit cost. Something that simple, and being able to deliver them an answer just as quick as Google. So that's one example on the front end of the supply chain. And on the back end, if you look at things like order validation and even down to fraud analysis, right? Looking at, we have a very large manufacturer of toys and other plastics products that leverages ThoughtSpot for order validation and missed orders, and they were able to actually identify a 7-figure missed order that was supposed to be going out to their largest customer, and they were able to do that through ThoughtSpot's AI engine. That is something that orders get stuck. It happens, right? But we were able to find that, hey, this order for this particular customer is taking a much longer time than most to go through the process. And because we have visibility across multiple systems, we're able to find that, bring that to the attention of the users, and they're able to get that order, for lack of a better term, unstuck. Again, this is somebody in a order validation role, not a data analyst or somebody that's working with the data day-to-day, a business user that's getting this brought to them proactively. So example on the front end and the back end of the supply chain.
Well, hopefully when you get done with the conference, you'll call the customer the front end and the supplier the back end. But most people think about it, that supply chain starts with a supplier, right? But I'm hoping that by Supply Chain 2030 that we start with the customer. And one of the things I love about your software is it goes across disparate systems, and people have such complex IT infrastructures. Can you talk a little bit about the IT infrastructure of the clients that you were just talking about? I mean, it wasn't like a single instance of SAP or Oracle, right?
Definitely not. No, you work with large enterprises as well, Laura, so it's in the dozens as far as different instances of ERPs, CRMs, and different systems that if you have a question about an order or maybe a supplier or a customer, that answer might live in an SAP. Part of it might live in Salesforce, part of it might live in a TMS or WMS or something, and another part might live in an in-house database. And to get that question answered the way that business user wants it answered at the time they need it answered is very, very difficult for large enterprises right now with so many disparate systems. So we work across very large, very complex architectures. Our largest customer by any measure is using ThoughtSpot for a variety of different things, not just within the supply chain, but even then mixing in data from human resources, for example, to figure out, how people productivity and labor productivity against orders going in and coming out and things like that. So it's, yes, absolutely across major data sets, tens of billions of rows, being able to deliver Google-like search experience and response, but also, to your point, a large amount of different systems that contain those tens of billions of rows of data.
So when I talk to a number of companies about search engine optimization and, search engine optimization in combination with descriptive analytics, often they'll say, we've got a lot of search engines and we've got a lot of forms of descriptive analytics. Why do we need a new one? So how do you answer that, and how do you think this will change by 2030?
It's a valid question, and of our hundreds of enterprise customers today, they all have at least one other, and usually several other forms of descriptive analytics. The reason they've invested in ThoughtSpot is we solve a different problem, which is allowing a business user to interact with their data to get questions answered in either an ad hoc nature, hey, I have a very specific question right now that I need to get answered, or using artificial intelligence to bring them answers to questions they didn't think to ask but may contain a significant business value. That stuck order example that we talked about earlier, but also something like a supplier exposure and being able to read and react against geopolitical forces, against different aspects of what can be considered disruptions in the supply chain. I think by 2030, the concept of search may even be fairly consistent and commonly used, but the artificial intelligence aspect certainly, I believe, will play a much, much larger part. Right now, we're just using that as a pervasive engine throughout the platform to bring those analyses and anomalies against the search. Hey, show me my suppliers in China last week by unit cost we talked about earlier. Okay, we'll show you a couple of correlations or insights related to that, but the ability by 2030 to ultimately start to act on some of those anomalies and correlations based on the knowledge of a business process and being able to say, based on these factors, this is the recommended action, and potentially even automating the action itself if it's a simple corrective measure or something that can be automated, quite frankly, and then leaving it up to the workforce to make decisions more around high-level strategy and more around being able to almost augment the AI engine at that point, right, and sort of help guide it.
Well, I certainly hope by 2030 that we eliminate the biggest issue people have about getting to data, and I think ThoughtSpot really is working on that mission. Any last words for people as we prepare for the Global Summit in 2030?
I think the biggest thing that our customers have had to overcome really is that last question, Laura, which is, hey, I've already invested in so many tools, right? Or we have an approved enterprise architecture that we've worked very hard on, gone through a lot of effort to create. Why do we need another tool? And I think really it comes down to what is the problem and the challenge and who does it impact? And I think having an open mind about those things and constantly be looking to solving large business problems, regardless of what it's going to take to do it in the sense of that architecture or those approved standardized tools, right? That's ultimately what I think, my last words would be there, is keeping an open mind about methods to do that. Whether it's ThoughtSpot or we'll be the first to tell you, hey, this is not our area. Here's where we recommend solving that problem. But really tackling that challenge and starting to bring business value back by doing so instead of falling into the trap of integration, standardization, and, well, just because it has this logo on it, it's going to fit in our architecture. It might, but it might not solve your problem.
Well, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at the summit. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Laura. Looking forward to it.